Hey there guys, this is Mr. Herbst here, and today my focus is going to be on this concept of science and engineering. Now I'm going to start off by talking about science and what science is. Science is a systematic tool that's used to discover information about nature as well as the universe. And this information is usually found in the form of theories and laws. So it's simply just the discovery of new information. Some examples of scientific discoveries were, for example, Newton's laws, his laws of motion. There's three laws of motion, and his laws on forces and the force of gravity. Then most famously, there was this guy named Charles Darwin that discovered or at least came up with, the theory of evolution. And he put it into simple terms that are still accepted today. And also, there's the theory of plate tectonics, which is a theory that we use to explain how volcanoes and earthquakes are caused. Some types of scientists would be such as this person here, which is a chemist. If you're a person that studies reactions amongst different elements, you are a chemist. You're gathering information about the way chemicals and elements work. If you're somebody that's out in the field that studies life, you are a biologist. You study information about the way that life works and behaves together. You may perhaps look at the way that what a turtle eats and make discoveries on food chains, and also how organisms are related through the process called evolution. And then here is a picture of Albert Einstein, who was probably the most famous physicist of all. A physicist is somebody that studies physics. They discover new properties about physics and laws of nature, and help to discover information about how the way the universe works. Now on to engineering. Engineering is basically the application or using that scientific information to solve problems and to make life better. Products that are created by engineering are in the form of new types of technology. So for example, all of these things in this picture here, this set of pictures, were created by engineers through the process of engineering. A cell phone, there's a lot of scientific information that had to be discovered first in order to properly put all that scientific information to make your life easier with the cell phone. Rockets. Newton and his laws of forces are very applicable to rockets. We learned about that in class when we built our rockets. Engineers are people that would have built the rockets to put people out into space. And once they're out into space, they can go ahead and perform more scientific discoveries that couldn't have been done if the people were not in space. Another example, one of the best examples of engineering in the last century, was the creation of the Hoover Dam out in Las Vegas. Created the Lake Mead right behind the Hoover Dam, which is the main source of water for all of Las Vegas. Also, somebody that builds robots is an example of an engineer. Robots obviously have applications to make our lives easier, especially in the future. And then also, one thing that not a lot of people think about, but engineers have to build things like stadiums and auditoriums. You have to have a very deep understanding about the way that sound works in a building in order to minimize echoes and all these things that we don't like when we're sitting there and listening to, say, a play or a performance. Some types of engineers, well, there's several different kinds. I'm going to focus on the major ones. One of those is a mechanical engineer. This is a person right here that deals with parts, moving parts. A mechanical engineer would be somebody that works on building new types of cars, or works on assembly lines, or works on new types of airplanes, something like that. You can also be a chemical engineer, where you are producing massive amounts of chemicals which will be used to make our lives easier, such as the chemicals that are used in cleaning your house. All of those things had to be produced, and all of those things make your life easier. Somebody could also be an electrical engineer, and that is a person that works with electricity that comes into your house, and all the power lines and all of that kind of stuff. And also, somebody could be a civil engineer. And if somebody's a civil engineer, they work on building bridges and building roads. Obviously, those things make your life easier. Now, here's the main steps in engineering. the first step is to design and develop a plan for your invention. This is usually done on paper or using computers. It's basically just a plan. The next step in engineering is to build a prototype. A prototype is basically just a working model of what you designed. It's basically the first one of a kind that was ever built. So think back, into like the late 90s, 1990s or whatever, when the first cell phone or the first smartphone was ever built. That first one was called a prototype, and it was used to find out if it was possible to mass produce these things so that we could use them for the public. So after the prototype is built, like I said, we test the prototype. We give it all sorts of stress and apply it to every realistic situation that we think that prototype is going to be used. So when people build cell phones or build a new kind of cell phones, they drop them from certain heights to see if they're going to break. They also perform hundreds and dozens of calls and see how long the battery is going to last. They do all these certain things to make sure their prototype is going to be useful and is going to be make people's lives easier when we mass produce it. And then finally, after we test our prototype, we evaluate, look to see if the prototype does what it's supposed to, and then if it doesn't, we redesign if needed. So this whole thing is sort of like a cycle. It's a never-ending cycle. New scientific information allows for new types of designs, which causes for new prototypes, which causes for new testing, and so on and so forth. But science and engineering are very closely related. And also, one thing that I want to point out is these are very, very highly valued jobs and also a lot of money. Anyway, here, guys, that concludes science and engineering. My name is Mr. Herbst, and I am signing off. Y'all have a nice day.